a speech that calls for foreign intervention, and he tried to include sectarianism against Suweida. The recent incidents was not a military operation launched by the state. It wasn't a military campaign by the state, but the atmosphere of chaos created one way or another by the chaos elements, by the military council deployed there, and the armed militias contributed to grow previous social tensions. As it is known to everyone, the tensions between the tribes inside the Suweida is not new. It's as old as Syria, and it witnessed recent breakouts in 2000 and in 1998. These tensions that took place and worsened and grew led to a massive death toll as the state tried to respond to the situation by sending its troops, as the internal security was exposed to ambushes and direct targeting. Of course, the state has recognized when it intervened that there has been a lot of violations that took place. We do not deny responsibility regarding these violations, and these were mentioned in the presidential statements and by President himself more than once. As we have indicated, we pledge to ensure accountability one way or another. This does not mean that we're going to stand silent before the series of crimes taking place by the outlaw groups, especially regarding the practices that threaten demographic change. As we have always stated, that the lack of statehood is the prime contributor to growing this dilemma, and by practice, not by words, that the lack of statehood, especially when the forces were redeployed outside of Suweida, what happened? The social tensions broke out once again, and they extended further. Some even tried to establish sectarianism links, which developed a tribal disagreements. The international mediators, after ensuring the determination of the state, called upon the state once again to intervene and stop these sectarianism practices. The state is responsible for the protection of all citizens, and we pledge accountability. This will be soon, and one way or another we shall understand the circumstances and the context of the conflict. One more question, please. The state pledges accountability, and we heard this from the president as well. We heard this also in the Sahel um, uh, events, and there was another time frame regarding the instructions to address the violations, and we haven't heard anything about accountability. So how are you going to rebuild the confidence between the state and the residents of these areas? Regarding the committee question, once the mandate is over and it ended by the 15th of this month, they are preparing the final report, and it will be announced very soon. The Suweida recent incidents delayed the issuance of the fact-finding mission report, but the state has nothing to hide. We recognize everything that is happening, but also we reaffirm the necessity of controlling and the sovereignty and unity of Syrian territories, and this is the essence of the contract with the Syrians, that the sovereignty and unity of the Syrian lands is a demand of all Syrians, and therefore this requires facing any intentions related to establishing autonomic or any group requesting autonomy. Hmm. Dear colleagues, can you state your name and the media outlet? Khalid Al-Murshid from TTERT Arabic, the spokesman of the Syrian Interior Ministry. He said that the redeployment of security forces in the governorate of Suweida, not on the Suweida city. And this was also mentioned on social media outlets related to Hajari. We have seen the redeployment away from the Suweida city or the areas of conflicts. Is it clear? Uh, it's not clear at the moment where the redeployment will be, especially with the ongoing tensions. Regarding the redeployment of the police forces, as I have mentioned during the briefings, there has been redeployments in the southern and eastern countryside of Suweida. In the 48 hours, we are trying to redeploy in the countryside of the Suweida city to prevent any tensions and direct engagement inside the city. And therefore, in some regions, the forces have reached adjacent areas to cities to prevent any further tensions. We haven't seen them inside the city in order to give an opportunity for humanitarian aid access and prompt response regarding the basic needs of the population. But after this second phase, the understandings will be reached and will be implemented, ensuring the redeployment of the internal police all over across the governorate. محمد الأشقر عربية. There are massive challenges faced by the state in the Suweida issue, a security issue and a humanitarian issue. Security-wise, where ceasefire was announced, we can notice that so far there are conflicts. The Suweida city to this moment is witnessing engagement between the tribes. What are the measures to be taken by the government to ensure real, true ceasefire across the government? And humanitarian-wise, what are the measures to be taken by the government to help the people who are suffering due to the ongoing tensions? There is a group in the Suweida city trying in its media and political rhetoric saying that the state is the problem and the state intervention will cause more problems and will lead to further conflicts and disputes. What has been proven by facts, especially after the state redeployed its forces outside of the Suweida city, the lack of statehood proved to be the problem, and its existence is the solution, and that's why the state was called to resolve the situation. We need to make this distinction very clearly between two paths: the existence of a state to resettle the dispute between the armed groups inside the Suweida. In case of the lack of the state, we have seen the Israeli interventions, and we have seen a group calling for Israel to intervene publicly. And that's why, based on the mediators' suggestions to have the redeployment on the borders of the city, the mediators once again found that the solution is the state, what we have been proposing for months. The state must be the one responsible for the basic services and for the aid distribution. Regarding the basic services and the humanitarian needs, the state since the very beginning of the liberation and unification of the Syrian state was the one responsible for providing all basic needs and supplies and services for a normal natural life in Suweida, unlike the groups that were trying one way or another to rule the city or to provide some kind of independence or autonomy in the rule or the governance of the city. The state was engaged to ensure normal life, and we tried through the institutions and through the governor. And the governor of Suweida was agreed upon from all the factions inhabiting the city. What happened now is that during the past period, the groups in Suweida was adopting a provocative approach, rejecting all political solutions or any existence for the state or the government. Even though it wasn't a military engagement at the moment, the model that was proposed by these groups and still provided is a very closed model that does not pay any attention to the Syrian sovereignty or integrity or territorial integrity. This is opposing all the desires of the rest of the factions, the real true citizens, and that's why the government is going to carry out its mission as it should. And there has been an emergency committee formed from different ministries: the emergency, the health, the social affairs, the labor ministry, in order to provide assistance and emergency response in different fields, medical, humanitarian, and so on, to carry out the first phase regarding prevailing stability and settling the dispute. And this will lead to humanitarian aid access to the city, also fixing the infrastructure regarding the communications and the rest of the facilities. Doctor, you have mentioned two humanitarian crossings to be opened in Daraa for humanitarian aid access and also for medical supplies. There has been a lot of calls in Suweida city for a humanitarian aid, humanitarian supplies and medical supplies for the hospitals that are almost announcing the collapse of the healthcare sector. How can you ensure the humanitarian aid access with the ongoing tensions, and will it take long to get the aid to those who need it? The announced ceasefire, no one committed to it till this point. The conflict is going on. Regarding the time frame of the ceasefire, through our experience in Syria, we have seen a lot of incidents and ceasefires. At the beginning, the ceasefire is always fragile, and it witnesses a lot of violations, as most parties do not commit to it, especially when the actors on the grounds are not non-state actors who are not following a central administration, and they are independent groups. And this coined the path of negotiation, which lacked centralism, and it also lacked the decision-making reference. That's why all forces should have accepted these understandings, but these powers rejected to reach a common consensus. There are calls now for the ceasefire, and the security affiliated with the government will try its best to resolve the conflict, ensuring releasing the detainees at both sides, as I have mentioned earlier in the presidential statement, that each one of the detainees should there has been civilian detainees from the Bedouin tribes, Undoubtedly, the ceasefire is highly complex, especially when the conflicts in a very heavily inhabited areas. They require high precision in settling these matters, and we are confident that the internal security forces will be able today or tomorrow, sooner or later, to resolve the conflict and prevent its renewal. Dear colleagues, we will take the last two questions. Your Excellency the Minister, you have mentioned three pathways to implement the agreement, but their question remains regarding the outlaw groups, especially when if these groups reject to engage in the under the state umbrella, and this is what we have witnessed when a certain group called for Israel to intervene. Undoubtedly, I have mentioned in my introduction that the state has always perceived the importance of political solutions, even if it went against different issues. And this was our approach with the Suweida city. This is what we did with Sheikh Ahmed Al-Hajri during the past few months. We reached different understandings more than once, but they always were always supported by Israel and were taking the circumstances to be agitated, and which led us to where we are today. The state and the government is calling all parties today to be reasonable, to have wisdom, and to invest in the territorial integrity of Syria, and to base the public interest above all, and to realize that Syria is big enough to realize all factions. But this requires an intention to engage with the state institutions and a commitment with the national values, including the principle of not using an external state. No doubt, Syria now is going through a transitional phase. We're not in a stable state. We, as you're all aware, the social disagreements and tensions are as old as the Syrian state itself. Some sectarian powers are re-emerging at the moment. Not all the factions that we're seeing today have the history opposing the Assad regime, but a lot have changed according to the current state, the current region status. And a lot of powers are investing in the sectarianism of the Syrian people, but we are saying that this is our duty as a government, and we're trying to apply this to ourselves before we ask others to do it. We need to place the national interest above all as the right path for all the active actors in Syria to contribute for a better future for Syria. Thank you so much, Asil, from the French agency. Commenting on the same question, what is the fate of national factions in Suweida, the ones controlling Suweida at the moment after the redeployment of the security forces? As you're aware, in the understandings we have reached 2 months ago, there has been a consensus on a gradual inclusion of all Suweida factions in the Ministry of Defense. We have responded to all principles to have the judiciary also from Suweida. This was a point of negotiations and a concession provided by the state to reach a political formula to solve the situation. The Syrian government was clear, and of course is a critical moment. The transition is highly difficult, and reaching A unified army will take a lot of time. It's a gradual mission, and we will face a lot of hardships. But we always remind ourselves that there are three pillars on which the Syrian politics is based on, that is unified people, unified government, unified military. We cannot give that up, not now, not ever. Last question. How long does the three phases will take? It's related to the progress of each phase. The time frame designated to the first phase regarding the settlement of the engagement is 48 hours. Based on that, the reality will be reassessed, and based on that, we will start the second phase. We cannot state a certain time frame for this, but once each path ends, we will start the next. There is room for more questions. You can go. Reuters has stated with a detailed report that the part of the terminology used by the US envoy was misinterpreted, and based on that, the decision to intervene in Suweida came. And this was based on different sources related to the Syrian government. What is your response to this report? And during the past few days, there was some sort of communication with the Israeli side. Who was the mediator between Israel and the Syrian government in this case of stability and the truce or ceasefire? The Hajari communication with Israel as well. How do you describe the Hajari communication with Israel directly? Regarding the Reuters report, the Syrian state was mentioned before. We had four systematic notes that I'm going to mention, but the state stance was included in the report as the Syrian state negated such allegations, and there was no military campaign desired by the state, and nothing was pre-planned. What happened was a response of the government to the worsening state of violence after the ongoing conflicts that led to a death toll of 30 citizens at the beginning of the incident, and that led to the government intervention in Suweida. As I have stated earlier, there has been a lot of provocations, including the provoking the governor, asking him to release certain elements and detainees who actually committed a lot of crimes, but the state preferred and chose the political path, and after demands, the governor gave in and actually wanted the political passage after all. So it was not based on any calculations, as some might argue. Regarding the Reuters report, it highly depended on um, certain factors. They said that these calculations it was a result for the Baku sessions and Baku meetings, and this was also not true. The ongoing negotiations with Israel only focused on one case, which is the Israeli withdrawal from the regions they have occupied after December 8th, and committing to the separation of powers of 1974. And we in the Ministry of Media more and more reiterated that we cannot talk now about any new agreements without the Israeli commitment to the first agreement. That's why this is one of the systematic notes They have also included the the analysis of what happened of the pro-Bashar analyst, the U.S. analyst, and the I think that there are a lot of systematic notes regarding to the media action, and I think Reuters in this report is required to review and take some considerations into account. The Bedouin tribes in the Suweida city, the Syrian state communicating with the Suweida tribes and factions for negotiations for a ceasefire. Is it taking place at the moment with the ongoing conflict? Regarding with the tribal existence in Suweida, it's very ancient. It's nothing new, and it's not the post-liberation or the post-Syrian revolution existence. It is wilted in the mountain. It is an integral part of Syria, and despite of several dilemmas and disagreements, but the residents of the mountains were able to coexist in successive timings, and they are going to overcome their issues. We are certain of that. All issues regarding coexistence, they will overcome all of these issues. This is an established fact, but as you are aware, the tribal dimension in Syria is very old, and it has the armament dimension. It's standing, especially during the Syrian revolution, when the entire society was had to be armed somehow. We have not seen any tribal references, systematic references for the Bedouins in Suweida for the upcoming period, but there are the wise heads of tribes that the state is communicating with at the moment, and in spite of our understanding of what happened and the resistance, what can be described as a resistance to the demographic change attempt carried out by internal groups from Suweida, they do not consider that the Syrian future should be in the hands of anyone but the government. That's why we are communicating with leaders of the tribes, with the leaders of all factions, to include all militarized or and armed factions under the state institutions umbrella, and to have a coexistence relationship. We will take the last question. What is the destiny of the military council supporting the Hajari, which is the main problem in Suweida? This is the first question, especially that the sixth article of the agreement includes ending any disarmament or militarization form outside of the state institutions. And also, what do you make of the Hajj's request to open a corridor with factions outside of the state? Regarding the militarized, in spite of the state understanding to the privacy and nature of each region and our understanding of the political arenas, especially during the 14 past months, we are working for negotiation and political solutions, but in the long run, or the medium or the short run, and regardless of the means, the state and the government are very keen to confine the arms inside the state institutions and to have a unified military that includes all Syrians regardless of their ethnic or sectarian belonging. This is the state strategy, and this strategy is established with all negotiations support with Qassad, and this was stressed more than once in the statement of the Syrian government: one army, one land, one government. And this applies to Suweida as well regarding the calls to establish some sort of a corridor or a communication channel. As I have mentioned earlier, the Sheikh al-Hajari group took the direction of escalation, but steps, and they have carried out really bad. They made really bad decisions when they resorted to the head of the occupying state. So certainly there are a lot of proposals, and there have been a lot of tensions recently, a lot of tense in reactions that does not reflect any wisdom or a future vision or a strategic vision, which really risks the entire population in Suweida. Anyway, we will have to address our reality with all of its challenges, but the Syrian path here is a unified Syrian territory. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Minister of the Media, and also I'd like to extend gratitude to all my uh, sisters and brothers from the media outlets. Thank you.